Hey, welcome to the Noob Spirit Podcast. My name is Isaac or Shrek, and today we are chatting with another legend Spiro from another part of the globe. This time it's former MasterChef contestant, or two-time MasterChef contestant, Harry Foster. I asked him, what are some chef skills every Spiro should learn? What are the main kitchen utensils missing from most Spiros' arsenals? And what are the biggest mistakes Spiros make with fish in the kitchen? We have a really good chat, and there's a lot of detail in here about caring for your catch, particularly after the shot has been taken. Harry, complete gentleman, absolutely frothing Spiro, and a really cool bloke. Got to meet him at the opening of the Adreno store down on the Gold Coast and have a good old yarn with him. And but before we get there, a quick shout out. Joe Murphy says on Instagram, he says, "Hey Shrek, hope you're well. I was listening to your podcast on being a tight-ass Spiro with Trevor, and I had a good laugh, and it reminded me of when I started off diving and didn't have a proper wetsuit for spearing. Used to get big bruises on my chest from loading my gun, and I ended up stuffing an old thong down the front of the suit, and it genuinely worked a treat. So a thong or a jandal, plugger, you can just cut off the back of that, chuck it down the front of your wetsuit, and when you're loading your bands, put the butt of the spear gun there on your chest. No more bruises, my friend. So thanks, Joe. Massive shout out for you. Joe Murphy 353 on Instagram. Big shout out. Wanted to tell you just quietly too about noobspiro.com. I don't know if you've been there. It's friggin' cool. There's mad merch for frothing noobers from all over the world. There's the Ultimate Guide series. There is a section there where you can leave a story. So called the Noober Story section. You can leave a product review. You can leave a scary story. You can leave a shout out for the podcast. Whatever you like, leave me a voicemail. But hey, while we're talking voicemails, let's go and have a listen to this one from Bert at Old Man Blue.
G'day guys, Old Man Blue here. Been listening to Noob Spiro podcast for the last 2 months. I think they're wonderful, really, really informative, great episodes everywhere. But one just stood out, and this is Even Leeson's episode 135. Shrek, good interview there, mate. I loved it. Even as a really good Spiro, humble, really sounds like a nice guy, and had some terrible experiences. And one was with a grey reef shark in Fiji, which was already terrible, but the string of events after was even worse. And I think everyone should listen to this. I don't want to go into great details, but the lessons learned, he shared it so wonderful, like importance of insurance and just to know, have a backup plan. Guys, give it a listen. This guy knows his stuff. Really nice fella. Can't say enough. Only the best. Bye.
He's an absolute legend. Old Man Blue. Check it out at oldmanblue.com.au. Let's get into it. Harry Foster, octopus preparation, tattoos with sharks. He's a cool dude. Let's get into it. Long-time sponsor, partner and supporter of the Noob Spiro podcast, Adreno.com.au has been with us for more than 100 episodes, and I, for one, am extraordinarily grateful. I believe there are 4 strong reasons to shop at Adreno.com.au. Number 1, price beat guarantee on any Australian spearfishing equipment price. Number 2, flat rate shipping across Australia. Number 3, hassle-free returns policy. It's super easy if you have any issues with your gear. Number 4, and probably the best of all, you can use the code NoobSpiro to save $20 on every purchase over $200 at Adreno.com.au. Now, and even now, you can use the code in-store. Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, new store on the way. It's a literal no-brainer if you're a Spiro in Australia. Thanks, Adreno. Recently, I brought some new equipment online at today's show sponsor, Neptonics.com, and I was super impressed by the quality of the packaging and the before and after sales support. These guys don't muck around. They make awesome, tough, dependable equipment, and their service matches the quality of the equipment they sell. Visit Neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% on anything and everything store-wide. If you're shopping in the USA and you spend more than $99, you get free shipping at Neptonics.com. G'day Noob Spiro community, welcome to the show, but most of all, welcome Harry Foster. We've got a very well-known and very well-regarded Spiro who's made TV at some portions of his life. So welcome to the show, Harry. It's awesome to get you on here, man.
Thank you very much for having me, mate. I appreciate it.
Cool. We were chatting before the show, and I'm already intrigued a lot about your journey. So from the heights of MasterChef, I'm more curious about how spearfishing in particular began for you.
Look, mate, spearfishing was it's always been such a massive part of my life. I guess I was spearfishing before I was cooking or really doing anything. I've always had this sort of affinity with the ocean, right? So I guess my earliest memories were going out in the boat to the Great Keppel Islands with Dad and my stepmom and my brothers, and Dad was spearfishing all the time, and we were catching fish everywhere. And that was like, I was 2 years old and all the way up till sort of I was an independent kid. I started going out spearfishing by myself or with my mate just off the coast of this little fishing town just north of Townsville where I grew up. And I guess that's sort of where it all started. That's where I really caught the bug for it, I suppose.
And spearfishing up there is pretty different, isn't it? Like it's as far as I'm aware, a lot of the diving is pretty shallow, and you've got a pretty abundant sort of food source right there on the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah, to give you some sort of, idea of the conditions, now that I think about it as an adult, I'm like, wow, that was probably the stupidest thing you could have been doing. However, like me and, a mate of mine, we were 12, 13. We'd walk off the beach just to this little shoal that was probably, I guess, 400 or 500 meters off the beach. And we'd go out there at mid-tide. And in far north Queensland, the water is dirty like 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's awful. And of course, you've got crocodiles and jellyfish and stingrays and stonefish, cone shells, and everything wants to eat you. And so we were like, we'd take ourselves out on the best of the best days, swim off the beach out to this sort of little shoal. And there was barely anything out there, just coral rubble and a couple of bommies here and there. And it stretched for a couple of 100 meters up the beach. The viz was probably 5 meters max on the best day that I ever saw it.
Yeah.
We'd take our little floaty out there and had a little bucket in the middle, and we just tow that around the reef for hours and hours on end, catching crayfish, and that's where I shot my first coral trout. And it was a really, really awesome learning curve for a young teenager, I think. And that's sort of where it all properly developed for me, and that's where I really sort of took interest in spearfishing.
So a lot of people probably think, you're in far north Queensland, you hop off the beach and you're in the Great Barrier Reef, but you've got these huge inshore sort of reef systems and the dirty water. How far off is where you starting to getting to some of the more pristine reef systems and stuff?
Where I grew up, there's this little place called Rolling Stone. So it's about 50 k's north of Townsville. And in between, straight off the coastline, we've just got rocks and shoals and stuff like that. Then the next out, on the horizon, I think it's maybe like somewhere between 14 and 20 k's out, you can see the Palm Island group.
Okay.
So you've got Palm Island, Havana, Orpheus, and the rest. And then out behind them is where the proper, really pristine reef starts, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because it's raining all the time and the conditions are always never great up in far north Queensland. When you're quite close to the coast, you don't really have those really clear, clean reefs like you do when you get offshore. So if you're really wanting to dive that beautiful reef, you still have to go out quite a ways.
Yeah. So the inshore stuff's got an appeal all of its own, though. Obviously, you've identified a lot of the hazards, the stuff that wants to eat you. How do you avoid that, and how do you learn to hunt in shit fizz? And what are the advantages to some of the inshore stuff?
I think the advantages to the inshore stuff is that there's such little access to good conditions that nobody ever bothers diving it. Like, I think we were the only people that really spearfished that reef. And what comes with that is, firstly, an abundance of species that recreational anglers don't have access to, like tuskfish or crayfish or, a bunch of other stuff. And then when you're diving on these reefs, a lot of these fish have never seen people before. So as kids, we were able to get close enough with our bloody rickety spear guns that were made from sticks and we were able to get close to these fish, and they were a lot less weary, I suppose. And that, I guess, that's probably the biggest advantage.
Some people, when they start out in the water, are content to kick around and look at stuff. And, there's a huge group of tourists that like to travel through the ocean and never touch anything or shoot anything like we do. What made you like that? Do you think that you've got a hunter inside?
I guess growing up, going out in the boat all the time and catching fish or seeing Dad catch fish mostly, that was sort of like I guess that was the trigger, I suppose. Like I was like, okay, yeah, I saw Dad doing this and now I want to go have a go and like I want to be my own independent fisherman,
Yeah.
I suppose. And so, going out there and catching these fish and being able to bring them back to shore alive, was a proud moment. Because there was literally everything there wanted to eat you. But yeah, being able to bring them back to shore and show my family and be like, yeah, I think it was actually more of like showing my mates how good I was. Just being
That's
like,
honest, man.
yeah.
That's a bit honest.
While you guys are fishing in the creek, we were out here catching crayfish and they're all too scared to do it. It was just me and my one mate.
Did they think you were mad?
Yeah. And I, now that as an adult, I'm like, wow, who let a 12 or 13-year-old go out there?
Yeah.
We'd see sharks and there's crocs there all the time. We never actually I never had a bad experience with a shark or a crocodile or a jellyfish or anything like that, which now that I think about it was probably really lucky because there was such an abundance of them.
Yeah.
Luckily, I never really had a bad experience with any animals out there.
With the crocs, are there any mitigating factors? Like, are there things you can do to because from my understanding, like from doing the croc interviews years and years ago now with Turbo, was that, you can have a system where someone's on a boat basically watching for you, and then you have an elaborate system for signalling, like banging the bottom of the boat and stuff like that. But if you're shore diving, particularly near the mouths of any rivers and in inshore conditions, crocs will go you because if you're out to sea, they're less likely to because they like to drag your corpse back to their warren or whatever the hell it is, and then basically eat your rotting remains. But in an inshore reef, I heard that is actually something that they may do. Well, what's your take on it?
I've never seen a crocodile portray predatory behavior. I've seen them like a lot in the wild, like the house that I grew up on backed onto the saltwater estuary that I guess the community was based off. So we lived where the freshwater met the saltwater and there was crocodiles there all the time. And I never have seen a crocodile like pursue an animal or look at humans or like want to target anything. I've never seen them predate anything. So I guess for me growing up, I was never convinced that what we saw in TV and in the movies was accurate.
Yeah.
I personally, we would actively seek out the crocodiles sometimes, which now that I think about it is awful, ridiculous. We were just kids in the tinny, and even Dad, we'd try and drive up and get as close as we can and drive through the creeks at night with the spotlight and stuff like that, just to look at them.
Yeah.
I never really had a bad experience with them. So when I was out there, I suppose I never thought about the risks and what you could do to help protect yourself from crocodiles. We had no chance if a crocodile came up to us back then. We just had a little floaty and our stinger suits. There was nothing stopping a crocodile from taking us. But yeah, I've never really been in a situation where I've seen crocodiles portray that behavior. And so it was never something that was on my mind, I suppose. But as an adult, I look back and I'm like, wow, the risks are so high, and it could have gone so wrong so many times.
Yeah.
Even there was a story last year of this guy getting bitten on the head on Blizzard Island, and this is an island group that's well off the coast and pristine reefs, and the water's clear as crystal, and it's beautiful. And the last thing you'd think is somebody going for a snorkel and getting chomped on the head by a salty.
Jeepers.
But I don't know. If you're shore diving, I suppose that's one of the risks that you have to take into consideration that could happen. And I don't think there's much stopping a crocodile from coming up and having a taste if you really wanted to.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, those early days, you and your mate, sounds like the blind leading the blind a little bit. You guys just got in and had a crack. What were the obstacles you encountered, in terms of equipment and breath hold and hunting and all that sort of stuff?
We had absolutely no idea what we were doing. Like when I say that, I mean that 100%. We had these rickety old spear guns, and we'd go out there. The visibility was shit all the time, like less than 5 meters. We'd go out there with our little floaty, and we'd just swim around for hours and hours on end. We probably missed thousands of fish just from lack of experience, and breath holding and free diving wasn't a thing back then. Like there wasn't any knowledge available to us online. Like that was probably I'm 27 now, and this is pushing, 14 years ago, I suppose. So that was like back when YouTube first started, and there was no access to information on spearfishing techniques or breath holding or safety or anything like that. And I think the idea of being a certified freediver and like learning how to hold your breath was so far beyond from, I guess, where we were at the time. And like that was, it felt like an olden day thing.
Yeah. And social media, like now I look at least probably a thread at least once a week, probably like how can I improve my breath hold? And there's lots of opportunities to have people, even really, really experienced people, comment on, equipment issues and all sorts of stuff. And you've got Northern Freediver, I think, is a Facebook group in the far north. Are you part of that group?
Yeah, and I have been for many, many years.
There's a good community vibe on there at times. I've enjoyed following along on the group's journey, and those groups, like with those Facebook groups and your spearfishing, like as long as there's a decent culture on it where you can ask apparently silly questions, like they're a great place to go. Some of them are better than others though.
Indeed. I think the problem with those Facebook groups is there's a lot of people that love to take the piss, and a lot of people like, I don't know what it is. It's like some sort of syndrome that, like some sort of testosterone syndrome that people get where they love to gloat about how good they are. When somebody new comes along, or when it comes to sharing information or something, they're like, all they want to do is take the piss. And I think there's a big divide of how good it could be and where it is now. I think community is definitely coming a long way as we speak. But, that's the problem that I have with those groups. And so I sort of tend to avoid posting anything on there, or if I have questions regarding spearfishing stuff, I'll ask people privately rather than sharing in those groups, because I've never really had a good experience.
There's a few factors at play. Like definitely tall poppy syndrome is one of them. But also, I hear what you're saying in terms of that cultural thing. I mean, that's a big part of why I started the Noob Spirit podcast. Like, there's just so much ego attached to stuff, and it's just kind of stupid and short-sighted, because it's like, who is teaching these people, and who's teaching them the right way? And
Exactly right,
connecting noobs with the experience and wisdom from experienced people like yourself is like it just makes sense. Like, why learn everything the hard way? Like, and after you've been spearfishing for 5 or 6 years, your ideas about sustainability and looking after the resource and things like that, they all change dramatically, and your knowledge sort of grows with it. And why not share those lessons and knowledge learned?
Spot on. I think what you're doing is great, because even in the name Noob Spiro, you're tailoring to a community that is catching people that are starting off. They might not even have any interest in spearfishing, but you could be the first point of call for them, and they're sort of engaging with it and learning. And on the other hand, you've got people that have been spearfishing probably for 20 years, I assume, that are listening to your podcast and still getting information out of it. And I think that's really fantastic, and it takes that sort of male ego out of it, and helps people get a better understanding of spearfishing techniques and ideas, and in an environment where there's no judgment, and there's no sort of like, there's nothing to gloat about, or nobody's better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's really great about what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, man. There are a portion of these guys that have been listening for years and years, and like sometimes people reach out to me. They've been spearfishing 20 years. They still listen to the podcast and they still learn stuff. And that the journey of spearfishing is one of self-mastery. And like, when does that stop? Like in any sphere of life, like if you're an idiot, you stop learning. Like if there's
every day is a school day, mate.
100%.
And that's what I try and live by.
Yeah, and like you just don't know what you don't know. And I mean, none of us know everything, so why not keep learning, I reckon. Talking about learning, We'll get away from social media, but I want to revisit some stuff with you. Not too long ago, you shot your first footballer. Now, you identified in your post. So I really like how you sort of educate when you're really active on Instagram and you do it right. Like I'm shit at it. I'm terrible at Instagram. But I've gone through your page this morning actually, and I was looking and you shot your first footballer. I remember seeing the photo, and it's a blue spotted coral trout. That basically, during a specific phase of its life, from my understanding, it's kind of a little bit like the Super Saiyan 1. And then they change phase again and they go to Super Saiyan 2 and they look completely different again. But tell us about your first footballer and how you manage that.
So I've been wanting to shoot a footballer from since I was spearfishing as a teenager, and I haven't seen that many. And I've had a couple of close calls where I've either been in front of the fish and I've been able to line up a shot, and I've either missed the fish or it just wasn't right. And so that sort of builds to the mystery or the wanting to be able to successfully land one of these fish, right? And so, and I think as well, I see the footballer as this special one. Yeah. And it's just a normal coral trout, right? Mm. But it's just a special color. So it's that makes it a little bit more exciting to catch. And so, I was out with a couple of mates off one of the reefs out in the Cap Bunker group, so Southern Great Barrier Reef, and there was a bunch of trout around, and right in the middle of them there was this footballer just sitting there, and I was like, I've been looking for you for a long time. And it was so bright and it was so vivid, and I was just staring at it. So I dropped down, and it was probably only in I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 meters. Yep. And I could see it so clearly from the surface. And I dropped down, and it pretty much swam straight into the spear.
Oh, I love it.
It was it just started swimming towards me, and I was like, wow.
It was a bit anticlimactic after all the years of just frothing and dreaming about shooting one.
Yeah, there was barely a hunt to speak of. I literally swam down on it and poked it in the head. But no, I was very happy and very proud of that. And I'm not, when I spearfish, I guess my ethos for spearfishing isn't about, I don't go out to hunt specific species, or I don't go out with a goal to catch a certain fish on that day. For me, it's sort of an opportunity to get food and have a good time, and to get better at what I like to do, to just build that hunting aspect and work on my freediving. And I'm just obsessed with the ocean in every single aspect anyway. So being out there, whether I've got a camera in my hand or it's a spear gun, it's still a good day for me. So yeah, I don't go out with the idea of I have to come home with a wahoo or I have to come home with a footballer or anything like that. It's sort of I take the opportunities that I'm given and that are presented to me, and whether it be a bloody slaty brim or whether it be a 15-kilo Spanish mackerel, I'm happy either way. They're all sort of bonuses on top of the experience, I suppose.
Yeah, love it. You mentioned photography. Now, your dad was a photographer. Is that where your sort of passion came from?
Yeah, so Dad was he's worked in TV and in film for most of his life, I suppose. He started off in photography, and when I was growing up, he worked for a television station, and then in my teens, he ended up moving into cinematography, and he did a bit of stuff with this production company called Digital Dimensions, which is now BioPixel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they shoot pretty much all the stuff that's relating to the Nat Geo documentaries or BBC or even a lot of the David Attenborough documentaries. It's a production company that shoots pretty much all the Great Barrier Reef stuff and a lot of stuff, ocean-related things. And so I got to grow up alongside filming the really cool sequences and these shots that were used in these beautiful documentaries.
Yeah.
And getting a really close-up or really interesting view of how animals work and different shooting techniques and what looks good in the camera, I suppose. So that's probably where my passion for photography really came from.
Capturing those David Attenborough moments on film seems to never go to plan a lot of the time, though. Spiros would be lucky, or even the photographers and videographers, they would capture a greater proportion, but like it's very hard to get even a decent proportion of the amount of cool shit we see actually onto film. Is that your experience?
Exactly right. Like, it is so hard. They reckon you should never ever work with animals.
Yeah.
It's so hard to not only get into a position where you get to see something incredible, whether it be like swimming with a humpback whale or filming a school of fish eating a bait ball or whatever it might be. That's hard enough just finding one of those in the first place, and then lining up shots, making sure that your camera is on and you've got a memory card in, and making sure that the lighting's right and you're coming to the right side of the bait ball, so where the sun is shining through the water and makes it actually look good, or visibility. Like, there's so many things that make those shots almost impossible. If you watch, I think it's Our Planet, one of the most recent Attenborough documentaries, watch the making of the series, because it's mind-blowing. And you see these guys that are, I think they were in, I can't remember where it was, maybe like Siberia or somewhere like that. They were filming these tigers that have barely even been filmed before.
Yep.
And they're out there for years just trying to get these shots that might last for something like 8 seconds or 15 seconds. And they literally spend months and months and months and months secluded in these tiny little cabins in this snow-covered forest just to get this tiny amount of footage. And it's
Shot from like huge telescopic lenses and the miles and miles away. Yeah.
And it's so cool to be able to see that, and you see these shots and you're like, wow, it was worth it.
So with your photography journey, I mean, having your dad, like sometimes people that are like 25 steps in front of you are difficult to learn from though. So what about your own photography and videography journey? Like what was some of the key learnings you made along the way?
I guess for my journey, I don't think I really learnt a lot from Dad. I think I probably picked up how best to shoot a mantis shrimp or anything like that. It was more so of, oh wow, that's a really cool shot. I'd love to be able to do that. So I took myself out, and then I had a camera when I was like, I don't know, 6 years old, and I was pointing and taking photos of shit. But then when I was, I guess, moving into my later teens, when I was living on the reef, I got my first GoPro and I had a professional camera, and that's when I really started teaching myself how to use a camera, how to get good shots. And then when Instagram first started, that was sort of the real platform for me to be able to engage with other people that were interested in photography, and then that really helped me learn more about it and want to get better at what I was doing. So yeah, probably Instagram, and Instagram was the biggest kicker for me in terms of photography and videography and sharing content.
Yeah, it's a very instant reward, isn't it? And you're not having to really edit too elaborately, or if you are, it's like, maybe a 1 minute of footage or a little bit less. Like it's a bit more less. It's a lower barrier to entry. Like I just edited this bloody video I did from the South Australia trip, and it's 35 minutes long. It took me 3 days to edit the thing.
I hate editing.
Oh, mate. It was so fun, but the trip was so cool, and I just had to do the video. And then I uploaded the video to YouTube, and I used royalty-free music, and then it still flagged 2 songs. And, it's flagged 3 songs. I legitimately used a portion of 10cc Dreadlock Holiday, but I had to use it for this one sort of section of the film, because the guy's movement, like he was coming up from a real deep dive in a sinkhole, and his shoulder roll it had to be 10cc Dreadlock Holiday. So anyway, it's been flagged, and I don't know if I'm going to have monetization issues. But anyway, my point is like, Instagram makes it a lot easier, because you're not worried about too much editing. You're just doing the job.
Exactly right. Yeah, last year I did a bunch of, I think I did like 9 or 10 catch and cook videos, because I was like, I'm going to become a YouTube star. This is my go-to. I came out of MasterChef and I was like, I'm going to make a catch and cook YouTube channel. Didn't go as well as I thought it was going to be. But the videos that were anywhere between 15, 20 minutes long,
Yeah.
just editing one of those literally took me 2 days.
Yep.
And I found myself going out specifically to film a video and then coming back, having to spend 2 days editing on it. And then I'd watch it back and I'd be like, oh, it's shit. I missed this shot. I could have got this and I should have done this.
Yeah.
And then now I look back at the editing. I'm like, wow, you have so much to learn.
Yeah.
And you should have done this and this and this. And I just stopped making videos. I wasn't I started working and I wasn't in a position to make videos anymore. And now I'm like, I don't know if I want to properly try and film and produce these catch and cook videos at all by myself anymore. It's just too hard. That takes the joy away from it.
Man, I can relate. I've this video here I just did. It's the best one I've done, but it's a long, long way from where I want to be. And you know, you film, then you edit, and you go, I'm missing this, and no one when they're starting ever films the right B-roll or enough B-roll.
Exactly.
But what you end up with is oodles and oodles of shit that just you never use for anything, and you've got hundreds of gig of footage, but none of it's useful. And then so you go out the next time and you improve incrementally. And every time you do it, it's this incremental improvement. This video, like I'm proud of it right now. In 6 months, I'll look back at it. And I know my attention to detail is not perfect because I like getting stuff out there rather than being a perfectionist because I value getting shit done more than I do perfection. Do you know what I mean? Give me some criticism. Oh, good. I'm the 80-20 dude, you know? Like, I'll do 20% of the work for 80% of the result. I'm not, you know, like, that's what I'm doing.
I feel you, mate. I feel you.
Yeah, and I think I hear what you're saying. Cinematography is very much a learn and burn model. Like it's just far out. It's frustrating. And podcasting is much easier. Long form conversations with people that I like, and we just riff and talk about fun stuff. It's far easier, but you know, like it depends on what you like doing. I guess like time and energy, opportunity costs are huge things when you're a talented person with lots of opportunity like you, Harry. So what are you wanting to spend your time on?
These days I'm not really sure. I've never really been sure of what I wanted to do, but I've done a lot in my career, a lot of really cool things. I've had a lot of really awesome opportunities, but I've never known what I wanted to do. And I think that's because firstly, maybe I'm like partially ADHD. So I'm like, it's hard for me to focus on things for long periods of time. And so I think that maybe comes into it, probably the majority of it. But like, I don't have that thing that I don't have a goal at the end, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The way that I sort of, my professional career and sort of my personal life, I suppose, I live very in the moment. And like for instance, I was just working in the Great Barrier Reef. I was working, had an amazing job on this island where I was cooking for max 12 people a day, and that was fantastic. And I literally just resigned last week, and now I'm off on another adventure. And I guess it's sort of like a gypsy lifestyle. I don't really have a home, so to speak, of. I live with mates most of the time.
Yep.
And yeah, I think what I get from that is I'm always in a position where I'm having an amazing time or an amazing adventure, and I treat life as a holiday. Mm-mm. And I don't I don't work to live. I live. Oh no, the other way around. I don't live to work.
I don't live to work. I work to live.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean, man. I 100% get it.
And so yeah, I'm just always into having a good time, and I guess living a bit of a nomadic or gypsy lifestyle is sort of part of that.
Yeah.
And I just love being able to experience new things all the time and keep my brain engaged, because if I sit for too long on something, I get bored.
Lobster bags, cray loops, gauges, accessories made by Spearos for Spearos. Check it out at oldmanblue.com.au. Equipment made to last. Are you in the market for a new spear gun? Killshot Spear Guns has got blue water Wahoo tuna guns, open track spear guns, enclosed track spear guns, rear handle enclosed tracks. Check them out at killshotspearguns.com. even better, I've got some good news for you. You can save $30 on any Killshot spear gun at killshotspearguns.com. Use the code NOOB. If you're in store, just say crikey, mate, or say Shrek from the Noob Spearo sent you, and you'll save $30. Ed Martin at killshotspearguns.com. Check him out. I guess despite your lack of specificity with regards to, like a career choice, you have been ambitious enough to do some big things in your life so far. And, like you've skilled up, you become a cocktail master, a photographer, an accomplished spearo, a lover of the reef and ecotourism. But I really want to dig into your chef skills and, as evidenced by, your couple of seasons on MasterChef and some of the phenomenal dishes you made. I want to focus in on Veterans Vault today, basically on some of your chefing journey. So would that be all right?
Yeah, totally.
Cool, all good. So just walk me through how being a chef became part of your life.
Do you know what? I think it started, I guess Dad would never cook, and my mum was sort of like the cook in my life, I guess. And so she, like in any conversation, she'd be the first person to tell you that my inspiration for cooking came from her. I don't think it did. I think it went hand in hand with my spearfishing journey. Going out on the reef, being able to come back with crayfish or coral trout or tuskfish or whatever it was, I found this profound interest in connecting the catching to the cooking, right? So being able to go out and take home a crayfish and being able to turn that crayfish into something that just really makes everybody in the room go, holy shit, that is delicious.
Yeah.
That was like the first part of the reward was catching the crayfish, and the second part was being able to share it with people and be like, and see the enjoyment on their faces from eating it. And so it's like a double whammy, right? And I think my passion for cooking definitely started when I started spearfishing, because I'd come home and I'd have these dinner parties or just even cooking for my parents, and just seeing how much they enjoyed it made me like it so much more.
Yeah. Man, there's so many places to dip in and find just a love affair with the spearfishing lifestyle. Like, there's, the spearfishing side of things where some people geek out on gear and they just love it. And people do the free diving or the hunting and I love talking to people that love every facet of spearfishing, and a lot of spearos I find, and I'm not leveling criticism at everyone, but I find that sometimes they can be a little bit disconnected with the caring for the catch side of things, because when you spearfish, if you live in an abundant fishery, there's never any shortage of fish. So it tends to lead to this idea of these 2 or 3 recipes that we just make, and that's what we do, and
Exactly
we don't
right.
we don't really get outside of that. I've got a cool idea I want to chat with you, but what's your take on that?
I've been very fortunate enough I've had work experience on a barramundi boat in far north Queensland, so catching wild barramundi using gill nets, and seeing the process of between setting a net and actually getting the fish to the fishmonger. So I've seen that side of it, and I've also been very fortunate enough to work with a good mate of mine, Chris Bolton, up in far north Queensland, and he's a premium line fisherman, and steals this fish for restaurants all around Australia. But these fish are like, they go from being caught, and a week later you can have a look at these fish and they look absolutely identical to the moment they came out of the water.
Wow. And
that was a massive eye-opener for me, because I was like, I've been brought up seeing how people handle their fish. Now that I know how they should be handled, and like the result that you can get after treating a fish like super, super respectfully and treating it really well the way that it should be, the result that you get at the end is like so much better. So like working on this barra boat, the barramundi would suffocate in the net, and then we'd bring them in onto the boat and they'd get thrown in, they'd hit the deck and they'd be dropped and thrown into the esky, and they wouldn't get bled because they're already dead. And then they'd sit in this ice slurry for days and days and days, and they'd finally get into port, and then they'd be lifted up out of these eskies and then thrown onto the ground, and then somebody would pick them up from the ground and then throw them into another esky. And the amount of bad handling that I've seen of fish, it hurt me so bad. And I was like, we are literally taking the lives of these fish and they're getting thrown onto the deck. They're getting bruised. They're suffocating. I'm not one that's like, don't go shooting the fish because we can't hurt their feelings or anything like that. I love spearfishing so much and I love fishing so much. But I really respect the importance of being able to treat the fish as best as we can. And, there's a massive divide, I think, in the fishing community and the spearfishing community. There's so much information in the fishing sense. There's so much technique out there and there's so much information on how to catch fish. And then there's so much information on how to cook them, connecting catching the fish and then connect the space between catching it and cooking it. I think there's a massive divide. So handling and looking after your fish, I think, is massive importance to me, especially.
So layout for me. So we go out spearfishing for a day on the Great Barrier Reef, and we're there for 8 hours, and we shoot maybe we shoot 5 or 6 fish each or whatever. What's the journey from there for you? Like, how as soon as that boat lands on the deck, obviously, like I like to bleed a fish in the water. Do you feel like every fish should be bled? What about gutting and so on?
Yeah, as soon as I shoot a fish, I target the head, of course, because you're reducing any sort of wastage of flesh. You're reducing any introduction of bacteria into the meat that you're eating. And so as soon as I shoot the fish, I get it to the surface and I'll brain spike it. So that fish is going to stop moving. It's going to stop building up lactic acid. It's going to stop building up stress, and then bleed it straight away. So just cut the gills. I don't slice the throat or anything because that's going to, again, you're introducing bacteria into parts of the flesh, or you're compromising their gut, and you never really want sort of gut juice floating around in your fish or getting into the hole where you've speared. It's never really great. So yeah, getting it to the surface, brain spiking it, just cutting the section of the gills, not actually slicing its throat or anything, and bleeding it in the water as soon as I catch it. I think that's a really, really big importance. And then from there, not like I won't go up to the boat and I won't throw it into the boat, or I won't let it hit the deck. It's sort of like it should be picked up by, whoever it is in the boat, or maybe I'll get into the boat if there's nobody there. I'll get into the boat myself. I'll put it into the esky, into a slurry, and like this, not with big chunks of ice or anything, with like nice ice that it's going to evenly coat the fish. I'm not just going to let it sit on top of the ice as well, and then drop the temperature as fast as possible. And then that gives you so much more time in terms of the preservation of the fish. I'm not letting fish sit on the deck. I'm not letting the sun sit on the fish at all. I'm not letting it get hot. And of course, I'm not letting, even for recreational anglers, I see them sort of pull up fish and they'll let them sit on the deck, or they'll chuck them into the esky before they've bled them, and they're still alive and they literally are just suffocating and building up lactic acid or building up these stress hormones in their flesh, which as an end result is going to tarnish the meat, and it's not going to last as long or taste as good as it could be. And I think, that's a massive part of when you actually get an interest in cooking the seafood that you're catching, you really can notice the quality of a fish that's been treated really well and like really respectfully, versus a fish that's sat on the deck, or it's been thrown into the boat or suffocated.
Yeah, massive. I like it.
Yeah, it's really, really important, I think, and that was a massive learning curve for me. Working on Chris's boat in Far North Queensland. All these fish are like immediately brain spiked, and their gills are clipped and they're put into an ice slurry, and that was a massive, massive thing for me. I was like, wow, this is how it's supposed to be done. This is how you're supposed to treat fish, and the end result is so much better.
I didn't realize we were going to talk so much about the process between actually shooting a fish and then even beginning to prepare it. Like, I've thought about this stuff, but you've really laid it out in a really nice, specific way there, including the rationale. I like it. What about dry aging? If you're going to put fish on a slurry, how long should they be in a slurry for?
I've never really experimented with dry aging, but just from working on the boat in Far North, the fish would be in a slurry until their body temperature reached zero, right? So like you're dropping the temperature as quickly as you can, so your fish aren't building up anything that they shouldn't be, or there's no degradation of the meat.
Yep.
And then they're being packed into like a sort of like a cool esky, I suppose.
Yeah.
Where they're going to sit at zero. So pretty much, I guess if it's different if you're a recreational fisherman because you're out in the boat all day and your fish are sitting in the esky. But yeah, don't quote me on this, but I wouldn't leave your fish in a slurry for more than 6 or 12 hours. Like it's not a overnight situation, I think.
Okay.
It's sort of take them out, get them into a fridge, get them covered, keep them moist. And as for dry aging, I've never really experimented with dry aging before. I've seen it done and I've tasted the result of dry aging, and I think it's really, really cool, and it's something I'd love to explore further in the past. But it's another kettle of fish.
Yeah, with the slurry, like on a lot of our spearfishing boats, like generally you'll have like maybe a 300 litre esky or 250 litre esky, and then maybe you put in 3 bags of ice. I think it's 5 litres of ice per bag.
Mm-hmm.
Don't quote me on that. But so obviously the consistency of the slurry is going to break down over the day because just due to the nature of it being sitting on the deck of a boat in the sun. You might start off with, say, 15 litres of cubed ice, and then what do you think the salt water to ice sort of ratio should be?
I think there's a couple of things that you can do, right? So for instance, you've got an esky, if it's dark blue, paint the lid a bit white. If it's going to sit in the sun in the back of your boat, that's going to reflect so much more light and it's going to absorb so much less heat. Your ice is going to last longer. Always put more ice than you think you're going to need, and you can always take it out if you need. But say, for instance, if I take 150 litre esky out, I'll half fill it with ice. As soon as I catch the first fish, I'll put salt water in there and just enough to be able to sink the fish into the ice and drop that temperature down as quickly as possible. And then if that's sitting in there maybe for 3 hours or 4 hours while I'm out in the boat, I'll take a bit of that water out. Once the ice has started to melt, I'll take a bit of that water out just to get that sort of slurry consistency back, and so the fish aren't just floating around in cold water. And just making sure that it's always cold. Never letting I see people have these spearfishing bags, and those long ones that they you can fit a wahoo or a Spanish in.
Yeah.
And they've just got blocks of ice in there. Like if that block of ice is sitting on one side of the fish or it's just resting up against the backside of your Spanish mackerel, what's happening to the front? Like what temperature is it actually inside of those bags? Or what I'm trying to say is like what you want to do is really drop the temperature consistently from the fish and just get it down to zero as fast as possible, because that's really going to ultimately give you the best quality, and just treat it the best way that you can.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I guess sometimes the other thing is like, like here in Brisbane, I'm driving for an hour, I'm out in the boat for an hour. We're out there for 10 hours, and then it's the same in reverse. I get home at the end of the day, the esky comes off the back of the boat, the cooler, the chili bin, wherever you are in the world. It comes off the back of the boat and it's all slurried up. My fish are inside. Generally, like the 3 or 4 divers are all heading in their different ways, so they're transferring those fish into their own cooler or esky or chili bin.
Mm-hmm.
And why can't we have one word for this, by the way? And then we're taking our own eskies back to our own homes. What do you think should happen there? Because I'll be honest with you, a lot of the time my spearfishing gear just gets thrown in the garage along with the esky, or the esky might come upstairs, but the fish stay inside till the next morning. If I've got time and energy, I will generally fill it and deal with the fish before I even wash my own gear. But I'll be honest, sometimes neither of those things happen because I'm just wrecked. Like I've been out for 14, 15 hours and I've come home, I've got,
Yeah, I know the feeling all too well. And like, I've certainly had those days myself where I'll leave the esky till the next day and I'm just looking at it like, fuck, I don't want to fill it 15 fish. But yeah, I guess it all comes back to like, if you're in a position where you can go out and you can catch food in the most sustainable way, like possible, then I think it deserves that energy, that extra, half an hour, an extra hour for you to put in and be able to respectfully deal with your catch and treat it the best way that it can be treated. So just so you can get the best result. And it's such a massive effort for us to go out there in the boat and be out there all day. And of course, diving as well, and then driving, and then coming home and cleaning your gear. It's such a massive effort. And so I think just putting that extra little bit of 10% to looking after your catch is just important.
If your buddy had a blackout on your next spearfishing trip, think, what would the outcome of that be? Do you know how to revive someone from a blackout? Would you even be in a position to do something about it? Or would you be diving, chasing after a fish as your buddy sinks down to the bottom of the ocean? Do you know where most blackouts happen? Do you know what you can do to minimize your risk of having a blackout? My name is Ted Hardy, and I'm the founder of freedivingsafety.com. In my free online course, you will learn the truth about shallow water blackout, the myth of, I don't push myself, I know my limits, I'm in tune with my body, how to minimize your risk of having a blackout, and most importantly, how to save your buddy's life if they have one. Visit freedivingsafety.com to sign up for your free course today. Dive safe out there. It's not even that hard.
All right, let's move on from that particular journey. So we've filleted our fish. We've got these glorious vacuum-packed fillets. We're going to start dealing with them. In your opinion, what are some chefing skills that every Spearo should spend some time learning?
Filleting is massive. You actually investing in a good quality knife, I think, would be the start, and making sure that it's sharp and you know how to use it. And then, teaching us. If you're not confident in filleting, maybe that should be like, you should learn how to fillet a fish before going out and teaching yourself any more aspects of spearfishing. Because I think I've seen people so many times, even on MasterChef, try and fillet a fish and just hack the absolute shit out of it. And it's like, it's so heartbreaking for me, because I'm like, wow, that fish died for this specific reason, or we spent so much time going out there to catch that, or it traveled X amount of miles to get to where it is now. And now it's just being hacked up. So filleting, I think, is a massive part. Just watching YouTube tutorials, practicing, of course.
One thing, like documentaries like Seaspiracy and what was that other one that came out a while ago about vegans and the meat? I don't know, I can't remember.
I think there's a few.
Game Changers is what I'm thinking of.
Yep.
One thing they delightfully overlook, right? They're heavy on their criticism of industrial food practices and stuff, and rightly so in some instances. But I tell you what, I worked in a meatworks when I was young, and we would deal with cattle. And the cattle would come in one end, and then they would leave the other end in a box. And not one bit of that animal was wasted. So all the offal and the guts and all that stuff would go into a department, and they would deal with every aspect of that animal. The hide would be tanned. Even the hoofs were mixed up, and something happened to them as well. But and I'm guessing it's the same with commercial fishing. I don't actually know for sure. Like, I'm sure that their frames and stuff get used and mixed into blood and bone, but the animals get used. One thing that sometimes we can be a little bit arrogant of when we're DIY, which I love, and I'm all about, killing my own animals and fish and preparing them and eating them and serving them to my family. The one thing we don't really pay attention to is yield, which is using the whole animal, the whole carcass. Because the resource is often quite abundant to us, we place less value on using the whole animal. Is that something you would agree with, or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like even I think a big one is fish collets, like the wings, right? Yeah. Everybody just fillets the fish, and you see these beautiful fish getting tossed aside, and there's so much meat. It's like killing a chicken, breaking it down, and just taking the breasts and leaving the thighs and the drumsticks, right?
Leave the breasts. The rest is the best.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And to be honest, for me, there's nothing better than a fish collar that's been marinated maybe in like tandoori or like some sort of curry paste, char grilled on a really hot barbecue.
Ooh.
So good. So good. And I see so many people just chucking them away.
Yep.
And even with a frame, you can make these amazing, amazing stocks. And granted, there is not that much you can do with a fish stock. However, it's so easy to get creative, and you can make chowders, you can make the base for a really awesome curry using a fish frame.
Pasta.
And stuff so many parts of the head have so much meat in them, like the cheeks and the jaws. And again, you see guys like Josh Nyland using literally the entire fish. I think that's while it may be technically hard for recreational people to do, or like people that aren't trained in cooking to follow those practices like you see in the Josh Nyland books. It's so good to be able to see that and coming to light now, and like raising awareness, or not awareness, but raising the idea of being able to use a whole fish, and how valuable it can actually be, because most of us just toss them aside.
While we're talking about that, I'm going to introduce or reintroduce this idea called 99 Spare Recipes to the community. Shameless self-plug here, so sorry to interrupt the interview, Harry. But I want to chat about it because I want you to be involved. And so 99 Spare Recipes is well underway in the back, sort of being worked on as we speak. But I'm planning on crowdsourcing recipes from the spearfishing community. And basically, it's the purpose of the book is to help spearos expand their repertoire with seafood. So every recipe, the caveat to supplying a recipe is that there'll be a number of requirements with regards to supplying a recipe, but they basically require less than 30 minutes prep time, because I want people to get away, particularly spearos, from those just the 2 or 3 recipe, the go-tos that we just slam over and over again. And I'm going to make it so every person that gets a recipe in the book will receive a free copy of the book. Harry, we chatted a little bit about before the show, but I really would love to get you involved. Is the wings, the tandoori wings that you were talking about, that sounds like a go-to, I think, for us.
Oh, 100%. Actually, I got pictures of it on my Instagram, and I think I might have I did a recipe, like a YouTube catch and cook video on it last year.
So where can people find your Instagram and YouTube while we're chatting about it?
My Instagram's just Hazfos, HAZFOS.
Yeah.
I've got a website called offthebeatencoast.co.
Okay.
And I've got a ton of like seafood recipes there, and we can go through them together, and you can choose out your favorite ones for the book. But they're all just easy stuff. I actually hate spending so much time in the kitchen. If I want to cook something, I want something that's going to be done fast, and especially if I'm with friends or family, like I don't want to spend hours and hours in the kitchen. I want to be able to like pump something super delicious out really quickly, and everyone's going to be able to enjoy it, right? I think that's such a good place for people that don't cook much or don't have that much knowledge in cooking. I think that's a fantastic place for them to start, because these are recipes using the seafood that we're catching, and they take less than half an hour. So I think the idea of a spearfishing book, great, excellent. To be honest, I don't even know if it's been done before.
I don't think it has, but let's break some ground together. That'll be cool. And it'd be an honour to have someone accomplished like you in there as well, Harry. So, hey, on your Instagram at Hazfos, I really have enjoyed just cherry picking through a couple of recipes that I saw this morning. One was the kingfish or the yellowtail ceviche. Can you walk a numpty like me through that very quickly?
I actually made this not yesterday, but the night before for a little party of mine again, and it was just so good. It's one of those things that's really actually hard to screw up. So you're literally just taking say for instance, you're cooking for 3 or 4 people, take a 400 or 500 gram slab of fresh kingy. I like using the barrel. So like, when you take your fillet off, you've got that top section that runs all the way from the shoulder down to the tail.
Yep.
That's the barrel. And you just take the bloodline off, and then, slice that up nice and thin, or you could cube it as well, and chuck it into a bowl with, some cherry tomatoes, some cucumber, some onion, some chives. And then all you have to do is just marinate it with lime juice, olive oil, and salt. Let it sit in the fridge for 10, 15 minutes, and chucking a bit of that ceviche on top of, like a round tortilla chip, or even a little cup of cos lettuce.
Oh,
so good. Oh, so good. Oh. And it's so easy.
Shit, I'm hungry. Oh, you're a bastard. I don't have any fresh fish on me. I could pull something out of the freezer for tonight. Can you ceviche frozen fish?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some fish that you shouldn't ceviche, and you shouldn't eat raw, I guess, not because it's like bad for you or anything like that, but because texture is a really important thing, right? So kingfish is fatty, it holds together really well, and the proteins in the meat they like bind together really well. So when you're cevicheing them, or whether you're curing them with lime juice or whatever it might be, it keeps its texture and it holds together really nicely. I sent the ceviche recipe to my parents, and I gave them some Spanish mackerel that I caught the other week, and I said, make this, it's going to be so good. And they said that they made it, and because of the Spanish, it just has a different sort of protein composition, like a flesh composition to the kingfish. The Spanish just entirely turned to mush, and it was like shit. So choosing the right fish is really important, I think.
I heard parrot and probably Tusky is really good for ceviche as well. Have you tried it?
I haven't done parrotfish or tuskfish in a ceviche. I've done coral trout. I've done red throat emperor before, and they work really well.
Okay.
But yeah, kingfish is probably the best.
All right.
By far, actually.
Oh, jeepers, kingfish sashimi or ceviche, like, just seems to do well on a raw fish. My mate Rosie, when I was in New Zealand last year in the Three Kings trip, she made this ceviche out of the Three Kings trevally, which is a trevally species, I think, quite unique to that part of the world. I don't even know the specific genus actually, but they were chopping through the pink mau, and these fish were sort of up to sort of 10 kilo. I think the ones we sort of shot were between sort of 6 and 7, so around that 15-pound mark. Jeepers, it made such good sashimi. Like, I ate seafood for 3 days in a row, and generally, you know, I just can't eat that much seafood consistently over that many days. Yep. Like, I love seafood, but I just don't want to eat it every day. But for 3 days, we ate a shit ton of seafood, and I just couldn't get enough. I could have kept going. I don't know what it was, but maybe it was just because of the talented chefs we had on board. But holy shit, we had. The other thing I saw on your Instagram that made me excited was you did an octopus preparation vid. I think it went for 7 or 8 minutes. So you and basically walk us through that.
Octopus is terrifying, and it's even for me. I remember I used to be so scared of it. I would never buy it. I would never cook it, just because I think there was so much fear. This sort of public idea of that it's really hard to cook and that it's really going to be fucking chewy if you screw it up, or it's really going to be, you know, it can go really wrong really easy. But from my experience over the last couple of years, I've cooked octopus a lot of times, and it's actually so much easier and so much better than people think. It's like, for me, I've rarely ever had like that terrible, super chewy, inedible octopus that everybody fears. I've never really seen that. Actually, I was on a trip to Thailand once, and I tried this octopus barbecued, and it was so bad. And that's actually probably the only time that I could think that I've ever had bad octopus. But it's so much easier than people think. If you were going to buy octopus, most of it comes tenderized anyway. So whether when you're cooking it in a fry pan or whether you're chucking it on the barbecue, most of the time it's going to be pretty good anyway, and it's hard to screw it up. Just don't overcook it. But I think if spearos are out there, or crayfishermen or anything, and you're pulling out octopus, tenderizing it, I think, is a good thing. I don't know.
What, do you just smash it on the rocks?
Yeah, chucking it into a catch bag and smashing it on the rocks for a bit. Freezing also helps as well, because what freezing does is essentially ice particles are forming around the proteins of the actual meat itself, and then when the ice particles grow, they shoot through the proteins and they split it apart. And then so that's sort of like tenderization in itself, and you're going to get a better result from that.
Sometimes with tougher forms of seafood, like, I got introduced to the idea of like blanching stuff, or what do you call it, with parboiling, you know. Is that something you would do with octopus? Like, I've heard bullshit about like soaking it in milk and all this other shit. Like, there's so much confusion about it. Like,
to be honest, I've never done any of that shit, and I've seen people that have done it, and the result works out exactly the same. Maybe a smoked octopus is actually really, really good, and for that, you brine it in a salt and sugar brine for a couple of hours. But if you were going to chuck a fresh octopus on the barbecue, maybe freeze it first, because you're probably going to get a better result. But yeah, chuck it on straight into the barbecue with a nice marinade, olive oil, salt, pepper, bit of lemon juice. Just let it go. And overcooking it is probably the easiest way to screw it up. But just take note of like what's happening. Like, use your fingers to actually feel the octopus. Get in touch with it, squeeze it, see, like, feel the tenderness. You can even just try cutting the thickest part in half. I find a lot of people are so scared of undercooking things, or like scared of something being raw. I always cook fish or crayfish or even squid or octopus, always undercook it and then let it set aside for 5 minutes to rest, because that 5 minutes is going to do absolute wonders. If your proteins are still going to be cooking for that last little bit of time, but you're taking it off the heat, so it's not going to be so aggressive. It's not going to overcook really easily. And of course, that sort of resting time just helps everything relax and get tender again anyway.
Love it. Awesome, man. I want to round out our Veterans Vault. I feel like we've had a really good, big, robust discussion about lots of parts of seafood cooking. Was there anything else you wanted to add while we're here, though?
I think just reiterating the importance of respecting your fish, and after you catch it, just again, like not letting the fish hit the deck, or clipping the gills to bleed it while it's in the water, brain spiking it, and just getting it straight onto ice as quickly as possible. I think that's the biggest takeaway from me, and I think that's one of the most important things that I've learned throughout my spearfishing journey, and even just for recreational fishing as well. Yeah, that's definitely one of the most important things that I've learned.
Awesome, Harry. It's fantastic to chat with a person who just became hungry from watching my octopus teacher as well, rather than the other way. The anthropomorphism in that film was just blatant, but I still enjoyed it. Jeepers, it was a good show. Have you seen it?
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
I did walk away from it being like, did that guy just have an affair with an octopus?
Yeah.
But I guess I looked a little bit deeper into it and saw the importance of the message and how beautiful the story actually was. And it was a really, really well done documentary.
Did you see the South African comedian's take on that documentary?
No, I haven't.
Let me just find it. I've got it here. It's called My Octopus Teacher, the sequel.
Oh, no.
You have to watch it. It's made by the South African comedian Glenn Biderman Pam, and it's friggin' hilarious. Like, it's only about 2 or 3 minutes long, but jeepers, I've watched it 4 or 5 times. I still cack myself. And it's a very small group of us, I think, that appreciate it.
Hey Shrek, Jeremy here, man. I'm back. Just wanted to say the podcast is growing from strength to strength, my friend. Hoorah, man. I just wanted to say thank you for your continued support from the Noob Sparrow listeners, subscribing, reading, writing, and submitting kick-ass spearfishing adventures from all over the planet. Your list is kick-ass, and Shrek, my friend, so do you. All you guys, come check out the next edition of Spearing Magazine at spearingmagazine.com. Jeremy out.
What about the rest of your spearfishing journey, man? I'd really love to dig into. So, I mean, what's in your gear bag? I mean, you're heading out for a day off, and you're in far north Queensland. What's your your equipment bag like? Are you someone that obsesses about gear, or is it very much sort of a peripheral concern to you?
I think in terms of gear, the only important things that really matter to me, everything else is sort of a bit trivial. A good gun, like a gun that's going to be reliable. I'm going to actually be able to safely and securely land the fish.
So give me some recommendations, specific ones that you like.
I've just got a Rob Allen tuna, 110, and that's been so good for me for years and years, and it's unbeatable, I think. I used a mate's rife, like a timber rife gun, the other day. That was also beautiful as well.
Oh, they're a nice gun.
Really lovely to shoot on. Gun is probably the most important. A good mask. I think masks are all subjective because we've all got different shaped faces, but nice low profile mask. And the next would be fins. Got a pair of carbon divers.
Ooh,
and they
nice.
help me look sexy as well in the water.
Yeah.
No, they don't help me look sexy. They help me feel sexy.
Yeah.
There's a big difference there.
Some of Ray Powell's designs on those fins are just phenomenal. They're a beautiful looking fin.
Yeah, I've got the Wahoo printed ones.
Ooh, yeah. Nice.
Curious to know whether I'll get eaten by a shark maybe one day, but we'll deal with that when the time comes.
I've seen it. It's pretty common, Like a lot of the fins will mimic, the skin patterns or the scale patterns of some of the cooler fish around. And I mean, why not? Like, I mean, that's so awesome to look at. Like, and I guess it's a clever little visual appeal to people that spearfish, because generally we love looking at the texture of fish, and it's something that we're kind of uniquely positioned to appreciate.
Exactly right. Yeah.
What about so gear? All good. What about funny stuff? You seem like a fairly relaxed and funny fella, but I'm partial to poo stories. I tell everyone this, but I'm not trying to bias your story. You don't have to have a poo story.
I don't have. There's plenty of poo stories, but none that I'm probably willing to share. I think everyone's got one of those actually. But no, I think funny stories. Probably the first thing that comes to mind is I've seen so many times people land a fish, even like with recreational fishing as well, or like line fishing. I mean, landing a fish, holding it while they're taking a photo, and then the fish goes mental, and then they drop it over the side. I think that is so funny. And it's happened to me once before, and I was lucky enough I had shot the fish and I had got it to the surface, and it ended up back in the water, but I got it back thankfully. But yeah, just so funny. Just, you're so proud of your catch, and then all of a sudden it's back in the drink.
Yeah. One of my funny ones, I think, is lining up on fish, and before you've even pulled the trigger, you're already visualizing the picture on Instagram holding the fish. I know it sounds really shallow and probably a bit silly, but can you relate to that?
No, mine is I see a fish and I see how good it tastes, and what I've literally been in the water. I was having this conversation a couple of weeks ago with somebody. I've literally been in the water and planned a dish around a fish that I've literally seen in front of my eyes. So like I'll be looking at a Spanish mackerel, for instance, and I'll be like, oh my God, you're going to taste so good on the barbecue with a nice little salad on the side, and then bang, shoot the fish.
You did shoot a Big Mac a couple of weeks back. Was that your biggest Spanish I saw?
That was my biggest Spanish. Actually, that was my first Spanish, my first and biggest. I didn't weigh it. I didn't even see how long it was. That wasn't really important to me. It was I was just more stoked about being able to hunt and take a Spanish mackerel. Yeah. It's just really rewarding because I've seen so many of them spearfishing throughout my life, and I've taken a couple of shots of them before, and they're so just fast and strong, and this flesh is so soft that they rip out really easy. Yeah. And I guess I've never really had the proper gear before, and being able to be set up enough and set up well enough that I could actually comfortably shoot one and land it, that was just so rewarding, and I was so stoked. That was my best fish and most, I guess, rewarding moment of spearfishing.
Smoked Spanish mackerel is possibly it's my top 3 favorite smoked fish of all time.
So good,
if not the favorite.
Just those big flakes, like you can just squeeze it a little bit and these huge big flakes come apart. Oh my God, so good.
I'm understanding.
Mouth is watering.
Yeah. Jeebus, it was 8 in the morning when we started this, Harry. I'm starving. I haven't had breakfast. I'm not normally a breakfast eater, but you've affected me. I want to get into the Spearo Q&A, which is our fastest sort of round of questions to exit the show. Before that, though, I just wanted to ask you quickly about the assortment of marine animal tattoos that you've been starting to gather over the years. Are you going to end up with a full ecosystem on your body?
I hope so. I really do. I've got an eagle ray on my thigh. That's where it started. I love eagle rays. And then I ended up it was probably about 6 weeks ago, I got a tiger shark on my left arm and then a leopard shark on my right arm. Yeah. I'm obsessed with them. I'm a absolute sucker for like really super realistic tattoos. Yeah. And of course, like I am obsessed with the ocean, and I love sharks so much.
Yeah, that cool, man.
And these are my 2 favorites. So yeah, I couldn't help myself.
Awesome.
And now I'm like, it's almost worrying because now I'm like, okay, what's going to be next? Where's it going to go? What's it going to look like in 5 years when I'm covered in them?
Yeah, Gorgonian sea fan on your left butt cheek. That'll go
great
good.
idea.
Yep. Spearo Q&A. So, what's the single best piece of advice you've ever been given for spearfishing?
Just relaxing. going down, like if you're at the surface and then you dive down, you're sitting on the bottom, you're holding onto a rock or a coral or whatever it might be, just not going with the intention of having to shoot something. Because I think that fish can really see your body language, and they can really, of course, like they're built to look for predators. And so if you're displaying a predatory behavior, then of course they're going to be more skittish, and you're never going to get as close as you will if you're just sitting there relaxed and enjoying and taking in the ocean.
Cool.
Just letting the fish come to you.
Love it. I had a question prepared, but then I was like waiting for a follow-up one. Who is your favorite person to go spearfishing with, and why?
Oh, I don't know. I don't spearfish with that many people anymore. I know I'm like the first person that should be saying that always dive with somebody, but I really enjoy, even if I don't have a gun in my hand or I'm just going out on a free dive, love just going out and sitting there. And it's like a meditative experience for me, I think, because I get to just stop. I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to worry about, what's going on around me. I don't have to worry about anybody else. And I'm just sitting there in the moment and taking it all in. However, everybody should always dive with a dive buddy.
Too late, mate. You've already ruined it. I have to put in a freedivingsafety.com ad in here now. No. By the way, just while Harry chatted about that, Ted Hardy's put together a free freediving safety course at freedivingsafety.com. But all good, Harry. I love you honestly, man. Could you describe what the spearfishing experience means to you in one sentence?
Spearfishing is the most sustainable and holistic way to obtain food and also enjoyment out of that process. I think that's what I love the most about it, right? You're going out there and you're really putting your skills to the test, and you're engaging with what you're catching and what you're eating, and you're seeing where it's coming from, and there's no bycatch, there's no interference with anything else. It's just you and the fish. And I think that's so good.
Love it. I asked for one sentence and you gave me a paragraph. You've over-delivered, Harry Foster.
I couldn't.
Awesome, man. Where can people come and find you?
Instagram at Hasfos, HAZFOS. You can check out my website as well, offthebeatencoast.co. And there's like a little recipe section there with a ton of like really, really easy recipes. And if anybody was actually keen, there's the Off the Beaten Coast YouTube channel as well. I haven't posted there since last year, but there's a couple of catch and cooks that are related to some of the recipes that are on the website. So if anybody wanted to have a look at those, you're more than welcome. But yeah, Instagram is where I'm most active.
Awesome, Harry. I've had a ball, man. I'm going to get you back. Hopefully it might be just for a shorter interview when I do the 99 Spear Recipes official launch and release, because I'm going to ask people for their submissions then, and it'll be great to give people a little bit of an insight into what you are going to contribute for the book, and it'll be cool to connect in the future, Harry. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again.
I'm excited, mate. Thanks very much.
G'day, guys. Hope you enjoyed Harry Foster today. Massive shout out to Hasfos on Instagram. Super cool dude. In 1 week, we are off to chat with Renee Taylor from the Salt Sisters, another woman helping to serve the frothing noob female Spearos out there. Really enjoyed having a chat with her. Super stoked to bring that episode to you in the next week or two. Also, if you love the show, I'd love it if you left a review wherever you listen to the podcast. Leave us a review. It always helps people find the show. If you're telling people about us, again, it just helps people find the show. One of the hardest things about having a podcast is just getting the word out there to people that might be interested. But anyway, again, if you froth on the show even more, love it if you come to patreon.com/noobspearo and become a Patreon listener. But that's it for me today. Shrek over and out. Spear safe and have fun. Catch up. Today's Noob Spearo podcast is proudly brought to you in partnership with Adreno Spearfishing Supplies. For your next piece of spearfishing equipment, head to adreno.com.au. Enjoy flat rate shipping Australia-wide. There's a huge range of gear, and you can save $20 on every purchase over $200 when you use the code Noob Spearo. Better yet, drop into their Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne or Perth megastores. There's another one on the way, by the way. Use the code Noob Spearo to save in-store or online at adreno.com.au. Boom. Neptonics.com, speargun hardware specialists proud partners of the Noob Spiro podcast. They make, design and manufacture some of the best gear to land your fish of a lifetime. Visit neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10, NOOB10. So visit neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% off store-wide.